There are moments in Washington where the real story happens in the shadows, where the cameras miss the most important details. What happened to Pam Bondi in that Senate hearing room wasn't just about questions and answers. It was about power, pressure, and a calculated political strategy that nobody wants to talk about publicly. I've walked those marble halls, I've sat in those leather chairs, and I can tell you right now, what you saw on C-SPAN was just the surface. The real drama was happening behind closed doors, in whispered conversations, and in the kind of political chess moves that would make your head spin. But before I reveal what really went down, I need you to do something for me. If you believe that the American people deserve to know the whole truth about how our government really works, hit that subscribe button right now. Become part of this community that refuses to accept the official story when we know there's more beneath the surface. Picture this scene. It's 9 a.m. on confirmation hearing day. Pam Bondi walks into that committee room thinking she's prepared for tough questions about her record, about her qualifications, about her vision for the Justice Department. What she wasn't prepared for was the coordinated assault that had been planned weeks in advance. You see, this wasn't just about her fitness for office. This was about sending a message to anyone who dares to challenge the establishment. And the way they did it? That's the part nobody explained to you. I watched senator after senator take their turns, and what struck me wasn't what they were asking. It was what they weren't asking. The questions seemed designed to create sound bites, to generate viral moments, to build a narrative that had nothing to do with her actual qualifications. But here's what you didn't see. 3 days before that hearing, there was a private meeting in the Hart Senate office building, room 216, if you want to be specific. Present were 4 Democratic senators, 2 senior staffers, and someone from outside government whose name I can't mention yet, but whose influence in Washington is undeniable. I know about this meeting because someone in that room had a crisis of conscience. They reached out to me afterward, troubled by what they witnessed. The level of coordination wasn't just political strategy. It was character assassination disguised as constitutional oversight. They had prepared what they called opposition research packets, 3-inch thick binders for each senator with color-coded sections, yellow tabs for financial connections, red tabs for controversial cases, blue tabs for potential gotcha moments. Every sentence was crafted to create maximum damage, regardless of context. The topic of that meeting? How to ensure that Bondi's hearing would become a political liability for the administration, regardless of how she performed. They weren't interested in her qualifications. They were interested in creating a spectacle that would dominate news cycles and fundraising appeals. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like typical Washington politics. Democrats opposing Republican nominees, Republicans defending them. But what made this different was the level of coordination, the specific targeting of her past statements, and the way they planned to use her own words against her in a context she never intended. They had prepared what they called the timeline strategy. Every major decision she made as Florida Attorney General was going to be connected to political contributions, to Trump's business interests, to a pattern they wanted to establish. Not because the connections were necessarily improper, but because they would look improper when presented in a certain way. I'm telling you this because I believe you deserve to know how the game is really played. When a nominee sits at that witness table, they're not just answering questions, they're walking through a minefield that was carefully laid out weeks before they ever entered the room. The pressure on Bondi wasn't just coming from the questions themselves. It was coming from the knowledge that every answer would be dissected, every pause analyzed, every facial expression turned into a meme or a campaign ad. That's the kind of psychological warfare that happens at the highest levels of government. But there was something else happening that day, something the cameras didn't catch and the transcripts don't show. During the lunch break, Bondi received a call. Not from the White House, not from her legal team, but from someone unexpected. Someone who had once sat in her position and understood exactly what she was going through. That conversation lasted 8 minutes. The caller told her something that changed everything. They're not trying to defeat your nomination. They're trying to break you as a person. Don't let them. Those words, from someone who had survived their own confirmation battle decades earlier, reminded her why she was there. The caller shared something else. Intelligence about the afternoon strategy, about which senator would ask what, about the real purpose behind each line of questioning. Not to help her cheat, but to help her understand that this wasn't about her record. This was about sending a message to anyone who might challenge the establishment in the future. What was said in those 8 minutes changed how she approached the afternoon session. You could see it in her posture, in the way she answered questions, in the confidence that seemed to return when everyone thought the pressure would break her. The senators on that committee thought they had her cornered. They thought the morning session had achieved what they wanted, but they underestimated something crucial about Pam Bondi. She's been through political battles before. She knows how to fight back. When Senator Harris started her line of questioning about the Trump University case, everyone in that room knew this was the moment they had been building toward. The optics were perfect from the Democrats' perspective. Former Attorney General who took money from Trump's organization now being nominated by Trump to run the Justice Department. But what happened next surprised everyone. Instead of getting defensive, instead of trying to explain away the timeline, Bondi did something nobody expected. She went on the offensive. She started asking questions back, not to the senators, but to the American people watching. She looked directly into that camera and said words that weren't in any prep book, weren't in any talking points. She spoke from the heart about what it means to serve the people, about the difference between political theater and actual justice. I've seen a lot of politicians under pressure, but this was different. Her voice didn't shake. Her hands didn't tremble. She leaned forward, looked each senator in the eye, and essentially said, without saying it, "I know what you're doing, and I'm not afraid of you." That moment lasted 93 seconds. And in those 93 seconds, she turned the entire dynamic of the hearing upside down. The senators who had been so confident in their attack plan suddenly looked like they were the ones being questioned. The room's energy shifted completely. Suddenly, the senators weren't controlling the narrative. She was. The pressure they had tried to apply, it backfired. Instead of breaking her down, it revealed her strength. Instead of making her look unqualified, it showed exactly why she was the right person for the job. But here's the thing about Washington. When Plan A doesn't work, they always have Plan B. And Plan B was already in motion before she finished her answer. Within minutes of that exchange, staffers were on their phones. Opposition research teams were getting new assignments. I watched it happen in real time. Text messages flying, calls being made to friendly reporters, social media accounts activating. The message was clear. If we can't stop her in the hearing room, we'll stop her in the court of public opinion. What followed was a media blitz, unlike anything I've seen for a cabinet nomination. Stories were planted in 3 major newspapers before she had even left the building. Cable news producers received research packets with suggested angles. Social media influencers got talking points disguised as organic reactions. They had contingency plans for every scenario. If she performed well, they'd focus on her past. If she stumbled, they'd amplify the stumbles. If she got emotional, they'd call her unstable. If she stayed calm, they'd call her calculating. The game was rigged from the start. They wanted you to focus on the sound bites, on the confrontational moments, on anything except the substance of what she actually said about her vision for the Justice Department. Because if you actually listened to that part, if you heard her plans for reform, for accountability, for bringing justice back to the Justice Department, you might start to think she was exactly what the country needed. The real pressure on Pam Bondi didn't come from the questions. It came from the machine that was designed to destroy anyone who threatens the status quo. It came from a system that profits from chaos, from conflict, from keeping the American people divided and distracted. But something remarkable happened that day. Despite all the pressure, despite all the coordinated attacks, despite the media narrative that was already being written before she sat down, Pam Bondi showed the country what real leadership looks like under fire. She didn't just survive that hearing, she won it. Not because she gave perfect answers, not because she avoided controversy, but because she showed character when it mattered most. The part no one explained to you was that this was never really about her qualifications. This was about power. This was about control. This was about whether the people get to choose their leaders or whether the establishment gets to veto anyone who doesn't play by their rules. And for one day, for those few hours in that hearing room, the people won. But the story isn't over. The pressure continues. The machine keeps grinding. And that's why I need you to be part of this conversation. Hit that like button if you believe the truth matters. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and become a member of this channel so we can keep shining light in the dark corners where the real decisions get made. Because democracy isn't a spectator sport. It requires all of us to stay engaged, to ask the hard questions, and to never accept the official story when our gut tells us there's more to learn. The pressure on Pam Bondi revealed something about how Washington really works. It showed us that the confirmation process has become a weapon, not a tool for evaluating qualifications. It exposed the machinery that operates behind every major political decision in this town. But here's what gives me hope. It also showed us that the machine can be beaten, not with more money, not with better connections, but with character and courage when it matters most. The question now is, what are we going to do about it?